Alrighty, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be going over lab number 5, which is for INFR 1411U. So let's pull over lab number 5. It's definitely an interesting one this time, only for the fact that the lab is not using Packet Tracer. It's actually going to be using WireShark. So something different, definitely a useful tool by all means. So going through this lab from the beginning, as we always do, it does give us this nice little topology, which really doesn't necessarily mean anything for us in the sense that it's just demonstrating that we have computers that we're going to need, whether you use one computer or a virtual machine. If you have 2 computers, it'll definitely make this a little bit easier. But even then, I think this lab is definitely capable of being completed with a sole computer, and even something as simple as like a gateway or a router or something else you have in your network that you can ping at. So it is definitely something that is able to be accomplished on your own. So the objectives for this, part 1, we're going to be obviously downloading and installing WireShark. I already have that installed, so if you don't already have that installed, we'll discuss that in a second. You're going to be capturing and analyzing local ICMP traffic in WireShark, which is a very, very small subset of what WireShark has and its capabilities. There's many, 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 many instructional videos that actually go over and talk about WireShark. So if you are interested in WireShark, I would definitely recommend that you take the time, find some resources online to go through that and work with that. But we'll show and we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that it has under its belt, as well as the ability to capture and analyze remote ICMP traffic. So ICMP is just basically an Internet Control Message Protocol data unit. It's pretty much just a ping. That's all it's saying is we're going to ping some things. One thing that it notes even later on, and I'll just mention it as a sort of a reminder, is some devices are programmed in such a way that they will not respond to ICMP traffic. So we may have to, go and modify that. So first things first, you can go to the WireShark page. You should be hopefully on a Windows-based machine, and you should always install the 64-bit installation. Now, one thing to note here, it mentions about what version is it that they have right now. So the version that I was able to download was WireShark 64-bit of 3.4.9.exe. So that's the version that most likely you're probably going to be downloading when you're watching this particular video. It's probably going to be your first time installing it, which is fantastic. It's always a great thing to work with. But what's going to happen is you're just going to go through, accept the default, rules inside of it, and the installation, location, all stuff. Just leave it all default. Not a big deal there. You are going to make sure that the box, which should be by default, the NPCap, is checked off. It will install that afterwards. All of the optional features inside of the WireShark, we don't need to install any of the extra optional features, so you can just leave it at its default configurations. USB PCAP will be disabled by default. Don't check that box. Personally, I've never used it, but I believe it allows you to capture traffic through the USB bus, probably, would be my guess. So don't check that off, as it probably will cause mass destruction to your machine. And then afterwards, you just basically go through and accept the license, and then the NPCAP will pop up and ask you to install. And then it's going to ask you to finish off the installation. It probably won't, but in the odd circumstances, maybe it might ask you to reboot. You'd have to reboot, but I don't think I've ever had to reboot a system after installing WireShark. So that's pretty easy in that regards. But what we're going to be doing in the first part is we're going to be analyzing our local machine. We're going to be using a Windows PC. We're going to be locating its MAC address through the command line using the command ipconfig. Specific switch option as the slash all, which is going to allow us to see all of the information about every interface that's on our system. So that's definitely going to benefit us to some degree. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you can see in there. And then, so it just goes through, it displays all the information. And it says here, asking a team member for their IP address or their MAC address. Yeah, don't provide them with your MAC address at this time. So, like I said, you can deal with this with a virtual machine or with your, another machine that's on your network. Chances are you have more than one computer inside your home. They don't really need to do much other than the fact that you're just sort of, having the ability to capture this ICMP traffic. So start WireShark to begin the capture. We'll need to make sure if you have multiple interfaces that you select the correct interface to capture on. So I'll talk about that as well. So as an example, my machine has a virtual machine software installed, so it has multiple interfaces to choose from. If you happen to choose the wrong one, then obviously you won't be able to capture any traffic. So it's fairly obvious which ones are right and which ones are wrong, and I'll go through and show that to you as well. But then you're going to go ahead and do your ping to that IP address, and then you're going to see data start to appear inside your WireShark window. So you're going to see your ping requests and your ping replies, and we'll go through those as well. And then after we're done, we're going to go ahead and hit the stop capture button. And then you're going to have to save the capture data, the local ICMP data. And then afterwards, we can go through, we can examine the actual ICMP. We can find the source and destination IP address, as well as the source and destination MAC address. So that's some cool things that you can do inside of there. And like I said, WireShark just basically reads frames on the line. And we can see that it's actually an Ethernet frame as well. We can see all that information inside of the actual capture, which is really cool. And then for part 3, we're going to start the data capture again. It's going to clear out the old stuff if you didn't save it. And we're going to ping some links. We're going to ping yahoo.com, cisco.com, google.com. Not too difficult there. After completing the capture, okay, add the 3 screenshots from the ping. So you're going to want to take a picture of, let's not click on that. You're going to want to take a picture of all 3 of those pings happening on your machine. And then you're going to want to, review the captured data for the MAC and that. List the destination IP and the MAC address for all 3 locations. Interesting. So one thing you're going to find out, there's going to be some sort of commonality, and we'll go through that together and look at that. But we're going to find the IP address for yahoo.com, the MAC address, what we received anyways for yahoo.com. We'll find something interesting out about that. The IP address for cisco.com, the MAC address for cisco.com, the IP address for google.com, and the MAC address for google.com. So, what's significant about this information? Yeah, we can answer all these questions afterwards. They're pretty straightforward. How does this information differ from local ping you received in part 1? Yeah, that should be also fairly easy to answer as well. Why does WireShark show the actual MAC address local host and not the actual local address? Not the actual MAC address for the remote host. Okay, I think I have an idea what they're asking about there, but we'll look at that afterwards. And then, yeah, you're going to add all this stuff together in a nice, beautiful little zippy with your lab report. Yeah, and it even includes a little appendix, because if you happen to be pinging another Windows machine, by default, Windows will block ICMP replies. It's kind of a security thing. The fact that nobody knows you're there is better than someone knowing you're there. So that stuff is blocked by default with Windows. So if you want to make it easy, you can just disable your firewall temporarily. Otherwise, you can go through the rigmarole of creating a firewall rule to allow ICMP traffic. And that's something that you'll have to decide. But once you get into a lab room and you're plugging in your machine and you're using it constantly as an endpoint, the firewall rule might be a benefit to you. One other interesting thing, too, that may or may not happen is if you have an antivirus software with a firewall inside of there as well, you may possibly have to adjust that, too. So this is just for adjusting the ICMP allow rule for Windows. All right, and yeah, that's it. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to throw it over to the side over here. So we have our command prompt, obviously. I've already gone and opened that up for us. And let me just get to the top of the lab so we can go through this. So first things first, it asks us to run the Ipconfig Slash All. So let's do our little Ipconfig Slash All. So we run through, we've done our Ipconfig Slash All, and as I mentioned before, we're gonna have a ton of information here. So we have like my Windows IP configuration. This is the stuff about my computer. We have my Ethernet adapter 1, Ethernet adapter 2. I have my VPN adapter. I have a wireless LAN adapter, and then I got another virtual wireless LAN adapter, which I believe come with WireShark. I can't remember why they automatically get installed. We have my VMware adapters, so we got VMware Net 1, VMnet 8, VMnet 10. Basically, typical installation for VMware is going to toss in 3 adapters for you. And then I have my actual wireless LAN adapter, and then I have a Bluetooth adapter. So lots of adapters to pick from, but the question is asking what's the MAC address of your physical adapter. And I guess that's going to be all relative depending on how you're connecting. If you're connecting wired, we're looking for an Ethernet adapter. If you're connecting wireless, you're looking for a wireless adapter. So as you can see, my Ethernet adapters have their media disconnected, therefore they're not connected. If I look here, we can find my wireless LAN adapter, which is the one that my laptop is currently connected to internet with. And it has a MAC address, which is the physical address here, of 04 ED 339839 N8D. And you might ask yourself, what's the whole purpose behind that? And the whole purpose behind that is it is broken up into 2 portions. The first portion here, so the first 24 bits are used to identify the manufacturer, and the last 24 bits are used to identify the adapter itself. So it should be a unique adapter. In the grand scheme of things, maybe you may run into one that has, matching things. And one other thing you'll also notice about this, instead of being like a binary, which is base 2, we're looking at something that is base 16. So it's 0 through 9, A through F. And you'll see it's in groupings of 2. So that's our wireless LAN adapter. And just so we don't forget about it, let's just go ahead. And I'm going to grab a little notepad file just so we can check these numbers into it. So, wireless LAN. And our wireless LAN MAC is bang. So just simply highlighting it on the screen, pressing enter will copy it. If you want to do an extra step, sure, we can grab the IP address. I don't believe we actually need it, but it may come in handy. And because I'm completing this inside of my VM, which I have running right here, I need to see what adapter this is using. So I can go ahead, I can go open up my adapter settings. It's using my NAT adapter. So if I go under my virtual network editor, I pull this over here, we can see it's using VMnet 8. So we go back here. I'm going to locate my VMnet 8. And the reason why this is important is because this is the adapter that I'm going to be using with my virtual machine. So we can see here, same thing. We have an adapter, its MAC address, its physical address. We have our three groupings of information for the manufacturer, and our other 3 groupings of information for the adapter number. So let's just go ahead and key this over here. VMnet 8. That's its MAC address, and the IP address that my computer has, which will be the default gateway for this, is 192.168.168.1. Alright. And I think that's everything we need from this. Let me go back to see the lab really quickly. Yeah, ask the team member for their PC's IP address, but do not provide them with the MAC address at this time. Ooh, challenging. So let me just log into my virtual machine over here, which is a little Linux virtual machine. Clear this up, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to run ifconfig to get my IP address. Now, I'm pretending that I can't see the MAC address. I'm clearly blind. My IP address is right here. My internet address is 192.168.168.145. So I'm going to put here other computer, and its IP address is 192.168.168.145. So we don't know its MAC address. Let's just clear the screen, pretend like we didn't see anything. Lucky for me, I didn't. Alright, so let's clear this screen over here. I'm just curious if it still actually has information. So let's just do a little ARP display. Yeah, we have a little entry in there. So let's just go ahead, and I'm actually going to delete the entry just for some sake of extra traffic we can capture. So I'm going to delete 192.168.168.145. So what you'll see here is that I have a dynamic ARP entry, one that's created automatically based on my machine. So, I guess it would help if I actually use the command. So it's not delete. It is arp-d requires elevated permissions. Yes, that's right. We do need to have actually an admin prompt. So let's do that. So simple way of doing that is you can go to your start menu, type in CMD, press Control-Shift-Enter. You can also just highlight over the command prompt area you got, right-click on one of them, or shift-right-click rather. Shift-right-click, and then you can run as administrator. So different command prompts. We see got command prompt here, and we got an administrative command prompt. So let's do our arp-d 192.168.168.145. There we go. And if we do our little delete, I'm wondering if it's going to beat us to it, though. Nope, it still is removed. So when we do our ping, we should actually get some nice traffic. So over here on the side, I actually have WireShark open right now. So let's pull it over here. So this is where I was talking about you need to be able to find the correct adapter you're looking for. So if you recall, I'm capturing stuff between me and my virtual machine. So what I am looking for is I am looking for VMnet. What a pain. I'm looking for VMnet 8, which I believe is that one there. Okay, so we're going to minimize that like that. And from my host, let's get my command prompt, and we're going to do a ping to 192.168.168.145. Wait for my traffic to build up. Oh, this is so beautiful. Perfect. So what we see here is we have some requests coming from my host machine. Request, request, request. And then we have reply, 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 reply. So we get a reply for every single request that was sent out. You might not have this already, and it's because I actually already typed in the ICMP. But in the top here for the filter, you just type in ICMP. And that basically allows us to filter out this specific traffic here. And now my question is, yeah, see if you clear out the filter, so you click on the X, you can see all the traffic that's going through. So lots and lots and lots of traffic. Stuff we don't need, so let's just go ahead and put back in our ICMP. There we go. So if we expand out our frame as an example, so we got our frame here, we can see it's an Ethernet frame. We can see that it has a coloring rule of ICMP, so that's fine. If we expand out our next level, let's just see what we had here. So for my VMnet 8, I would have had C0008. So my source is C0008. And let's see, I got a reply. Let me just check that. Yes, perfect. So my destination is the destination machine. So I was pinging my virtual machine, and that's what comes in here. So I got my MAC address, the one that I needed to find out for my other machine. So we can see here, destination, and we got the source, C0008. It also kind of, paraphrases it up here, though. It's IPv4 that's happening. That's why I got the IPv4 type flag. Something that was talked about in the book. We can even expand down a little bit farther if we want and look at the fact that our source address is 192.168.168.1. Our destination is 192.168.168.145. And the ICMP data is basically just information about the actual ICMP request itself. So we can see that in our reply, it's just the reverse. So the destination is now my local machine on its default gateway, and the source is the MAC address of my machine I was pinging. So that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing destination, that's the interface of my PC, and my virtual machine. We can even confirm this. So I go over to my virtual machine and I type in the Linux equivalent for this, which is ifconfig. We can see here, yeah, Ethernet MAC address. We got the last bit we can just look at, which is 1C07A5. And is that what we got? Our source, 1C07A5. Yeah, that's our correct source. So that right there is our MAC to IP address translation. Now, one other cool thing you can do, instead of being ICMP, you can actually just type in ARP as an example. So one of the things you probably saw me do at the very, very beginning was I deleted that entry, right? Because I wanted to generate some Arp frames, basically. So what ended up happening was... here we go. This probably would have been right when I sent off that initial packet. So it's basically saying, who has the address 192.168.168.145? Let the owner of 192.168.166.8.1 know. So we can see that the source is my host machine. The destination is a layer 2 broadcast, so it's all Fs. And that's sort of like our little ARP frame. And then what ends up happening is that particular device then sends off a reply. So the source is the MAC address. We know that now because we did a ping, but it's 1C07A5, and the destination is my host machine. So my Linux machine was messaging my host machine to give it a reply back to its ARP request, which was part of this broadcast right here saying, hey, who has this information? Let me know, because we need to, fill my ARP table, because I cleared it out. So if I go over here now, and I run the arp-a, you'll actually see I now have my dynamic entry there, 1C07A5 for my IP address, 192.168.168.145. So that is that bit. Okay. Now, if you happen to not have another machine, that is something that could be possible. We should be able to use our default gateway. Doesn't look like from the lab we actually have anything else. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to switch this back to ICMP traffic. And if you wanted to save your export or whatever it was, because I think it asked us to save that, didn't it? Yeah, save as. So basically, you'd want to come in here. Oh, you gotta stop it, that's why. You'd hit stop, and then you'd hit the save as part, and then from here you would able to save your PCAP though. So let's go ahead and restart this back up again. Continue without saving, that's fine. So we got my ICMP going, and this time instead, what I'm going to do, and I'm, no, I can't use that interface, because if I use that interface, it's not going to show anything. Continue without saving. Yeah, that's fine. I want to change the interface, though. Stop. Where is the capture options? There it is. We're going to switch it to my wireless adapter. But before I do that, actually, I want to add the ICMP filter. Capture filter. No, it wasn't filters. There we go. Options. And we are going to listen on our wireless adapter. Continue without saving. Sure thingy. And instead, I just want to do one extra bit. My main adapter is using... What was my IP address? Ipconfig, wireless is 1.7. Okay, so I want to clear out my default gateway as well. So let's do an arp-d 192.168.1.1. Okay, and now we can do our ping to 192.168.1.1. And we see we have our 4 pings happening, and we can see the same thing happening here. It's a little bit more difficult because we'll have to do more investigation to figure out what the actual adapter is, but I know it's a Netgear router that it's connecting to, so that's fine. So we have a request, 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 reply, 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 reply. So we can expand our request this exact same way as before. It looks identical, right? We have our frame. We can expand it out. We see that it's automatically been detected as an ICMP or the packet tracer. WireShark is pretty solid for this, though. We see that it's an encapsulation of an Ethernet frame. So we open up our Ethernet frame portion. So we're in layer 2 right now. Layer 2, even the WireShark knows that this specific MAC address is actually a Netgear based on the first 3 groupings, right? So we see there Netgear 80, we have 80, 11, 75. So it's replaced the first portion and it's left the last 3 blocks because 801175 is the unique part of this adapter from the factory. And then we have our adapter itself. And let me just check my notes here to see. Our adapter was 98398D. 98398D, Intel Corporation. So it's even detected that as well. So we have our ping that's being sent off. Our destination is our default gateway. Our source is our... Oh, did I click off? I went to reply. Whoopsie daisy. Let's click back on the number again. There we go. Reply. Our destination is our internet adapter for our laptop, and our source is the other thing. And then if we expand out our layer 3 portion, we can see how we have our source IP address. Because this is the reply, it's coming from my default gateway, and it's coming to my local machine, which is 192.168.1.7. So you can go through and you can expand out the individual portions and see all the different flags and bits of information that's provided to us. And then we can also go ahead and look at the previous one. Same thing as well. We can see our destination, we can see our source, and we can see all the flags and information about our package. Now, if you recall, I deleted that entry, so I should actually have a nice amount of ARP packets going on here. Specifically, we are looking for one from my machine, if we remember correctly. And here it is, right here. Because I deleted it, and as soon as I sent off the package, we can see here my computer saying, hey, who has 192.168.1.1, which is the default gateway, and it says, go ahead and tell me. And it's telling me as in my local laptop's interface. And then the netgear says, I have the address 192.168.1.1 at, and then it provides its MAC address. So then that's now added to my ARP table. So if I go to the command prompt now, I can go ahead and run my arp-a, and we can see I now have that entry re-added back in there again. And let's just do a little check, see if it matches. It does. DCEF 09801175. So we see that 192.168.1.1, and it's given a physical address, and it's dynamically configured, not statically. So it's been configured automatically from this ARP process. So that's actually kind of cool. And then you got to go ahead and save that capture as well if you hadn't already saved it anyways. But this is just an example of using my default gateway for something similar, right? It just needs to be a node on your network that you can accept traffic to. That's at least the way the lab looks. You know, I would also maybe even go a step further and sort of reach out and confirm with the professor, and maybe even write about it in your lab, how you use the default gateway instead of a computer because you didn't have one. Or maybe you do have a computer, another one, all right? Doesn't need to be anything special, it just needs to be something that you can ping. So, question, does the source MAC address match your PC interface? Yes, yes it did, right? Remember we had this from before. We had the wireless LAN adapter, and we had my IP address, so that did match. Does the destination match your team member's MAC address? You know, in my case, I did it with VMware. Yes, it does. If you wanted to be 100% certain that this actually truly did match, on the bottom or back of your router, there's a sticker, and on that sticker, it'll tell you what its MAC address is. So when you flip that over, you can check what the MAC address is for the wireless and for the wired connection, or sorry, for the wireless connection, and then go from there. How is the MAC address of the PC? How is the MAC address of the ping PC obtained by your PC? Well, we just went through that, right? It's obtained through the ARP process. So this automatic addressing system for layer 2. As we can see, once again, my computer sends off a broadcast layer 2 packet. It's all Fs. And then it sends it out. I only have one interface, but if this was going to a switch as an example, and this was another adapter somewhere, it would go into that switch, then the switch would forward this broadcast layer 2 packet out to all the other devices on my network. And then whoever had it would then respond back with a unicast. And this unicast is specific just to me. So it sends back a message with the MAC address, remembering because this is layer 2, we don't need that layer 3 IP address. So it just responds and it says, yes, I have that address. This is my MAC address. Let's be friends. And that's part of the reason why when we do those pings and things like that, when we're dealing with our networks, you may notice the first couple packets fail, and that's just, it's time to build up the databases. Similarly, if you had a web server and you were, configuring DNS for the first time, you'll notice that typically when you configure the web server to the DNS name, it'll say something like, it may take up to a few hours for it to update across the internet, and for that kind of stuff to happen. So the next part, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a ping to yahoo.com, cisco.com, and google.com. Fairly easy. So let's go ahead. We're going to go and stop this. Put that back to ICMP. And we're going to go ahead and restart this capture, continue without saving. Perfect. We're going to open back up my adapter. And we are going to go ahead and ping www.yahoo.com. And we can see my few pings went off without a hitch. So we can actually even see right off the bat, right? I pinged yahoo.com, but you'll notice I didn't actually ping that specific site. What happens is my ping is actually going through a process in the background. It's translating its DNS address from yahoo.com. And specifically, I'm trying to access the subdomain of www from the Yahoo server, which is then being converted, so to speak, to new-fp-shed.wg1.b.yahoo.com. Basically, it's handing me off to its specifically to its web server, and which one it is doesn't really matter to me necessarily. So we pinged it, and we got to ping a couple other sites. So let's go to ping cisco.com. Do we want to ping it yet? We'll hold off so I don't get this all mixed up. Okay, so we do my ping request here. So we can look at my window, and what IP address was it pinging? 74.6.143.25. So we open up our first thing, same thing as well. We can see our Ethernet frame. Interesting, eh? Check this out. So we know for a fact that Intel Corp 98398D is my local wireless adapter, and we know my other bit, which is my destination. Netgear AD1175 is my router that I'm talking to, but I pinged Yahoo, right? Well, remembering that MAC addresses are specific to layer 2. And we have my reply that comes back. See, same thing. The source is Netgear. The destination is me. However, check this out. Wrapped inside of that, in my layer 3, I have that source IP address. And I got the destination IP address. Interesting, eh? Interesting. So what's actually happening here, as we've discussed, hopefully, or we have discussed anyways in classes, is the fact that when we ping something, or when we send any package down the line, it goes through a decapsulation and an encapsulation process over and over and over again as it's being passed around. So if I grab this little file, I'm just going to zip this up here for a second so I can use the topology. So basically what ends up happening is when this computer right here wants to talk to something on the internet, it creates a frame. And that piece of information is basically going to have a MAC address. And the MAC address, remembering that so far we've talked about quite often, is it's going to be the default gateway, right? Because it has to get out of the network. So that ping has a source MAC address of this computer. It has a destination MAC address of this computer. But it has a source IP address of this PC and a destination IP address of whatever it is in the internet. So it says, this IP address is not on my local LAN. I'm going to forward it to my default gateway. So that package goes from here, and it goes to the default router, and it comes over to this router. And then the router goes, yeah, I don't have that network attached to me, so I'm going to forward that package to my default route, which is basically out this interface into the World Wide Web. So when it goes to forward that out that interface, it rebuilds the layer 2 packet. So that layer 2 portion of the packet is basically being rebuilt, and it's being shoved out its interface onto the internet. And when it gets shoved out the interface, the layer 2 is now going to have this MAC address, and then it's going to have the destination MAC address of wherever it's trying to send this data to. So that's kind of what's happening here, and why, you may have expected it to be a different MAC address, but it's not. The MAC address that's being assigned is just the same one it's always going to be assigned every single time. And we can go ahead and we can test that out as well, right? We can go and we can get our command prompt, and we can do another ping. Oh, Still had it open. Perfect. Ping cisco.com. And we have to ping google.com. I ping google.ca. Life is rough. But you'd be pinging google.com. And if we go down here, we can see we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one is going to be, so this one is for Cisco 4.185, yes. And then we go 1, that's 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And this one is our google.ca, which is happening there. So yeah, so you can write down your MAC address, you can write down your IP address. You know, what's significant about this information? Well, I'm not going to necessarily answer that because I think that's more of a personal opinion on what it is. But you know, you can tell, you know, how it differs from a local ping to a to one on the internet. Well, what's it using? You can see how the MAC address is a new interface that's on your local LAN, and how you can see that the IP address is outside your LAN. And that kind of also will answer, you know, I've answered all these questions really just in that discussion that I just had about, like, why does WireShark not show the actual MAC address of the remote host, but it shows the actual one of the local host? Because it doesn't need to, right? Layer 2 is local. It's not in a remote setting. There's no routing associated with this layer 2. If it's not local, it's not there. And yeah, that's the end of this lab, actually. Like I said, it was a pretty solid lab. But one other thing you can do inside of here, so as an example, I can do a, let me just pull this off screen for a second. Let's see if I can find the entry for it. So in that same filter, you can, as an example, like put in a DNS, for instance. I'm just seeing if I can find... yes, here it is. So we see here, we have our query, right? I pinged cisco.com. So I got my little query here, 72.163.4.185. So this is actually my machine sending out that that ping to cisco.com. It doesn't know cisco.com's IP address, so it had to actually send out a query to get that. Similarly, we also did our query for our google.ca. So that also happened there as well. And can I do that way? No, I can't do it that way. I have to actually... Let's see if I can stop it. Yeah, no, there's no... I can't remember the exact way to filter it easily. There's our Yahoo one, though. Our Yahoo DNS request to our machine. So it sent out a query and it got a response to tell it how to basically get to our system. So yeah, so that was the query, and then we had the response that came back right afterwards. So www.yahoo.com has a CNAME of, and then that's the name that we were pinging, if you remember, and the IP address that it was pinging, or at least one of them anyways. It had multiple addresses. There's all sorts of like interesting things you can do inside of WireShark, right? You can basically filter and choose data, you know, as you see fit, so to speak. Let me just see. And you can even take, you know, your captures and stuff like that. So like after you've saved your capture, you can reopen it and look at it that way. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the lab. I got nothing else to to cover. So hopefully you found the information useful. I guess really the only other thing I could discuss would be if you wanted to add a firewall rule. Let me just see what rules I have in there already. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so you can go here, you can click on New Rule, and I guess if you wanted to get here, you could just go to the Start menu and just type in Firewall, and it will bring you to this location. You click on New Rule, and then when you want to add the new rule here, we're adding an ICMP request. So on the custom custom next protocols and ports. We're looking for ICMP. ICMP version 4. And then we need to tell it what we want this rule to apply to. And this is sort of like the debatable bit, you know. Do you want it to apply to everything, not everything? And it's a rule you can disable, enable, so you can just leave it on as that and then disable it when you don't need it. Or if you know specifically which interface you want to apply it to, or maybe like which, if you know the labs as an example are always going to be using in the 10 network, you can set that specific 10 network to be only allowed. But, you know, for debugging purposes, it's probably just easier to allow it all together. We need to allow, you know, all the connections, doesn't matter if it's secure or not, what profile you want it to apply to. So you may or may not know this, but when you have your computer joined to a domain, it applies a domain firewall profile. But for you, you really only probably need to worry about private or public. So basically, when you connect to a new network and it asks you if you want your machine to be identified on the network and to share resources, if you said no, it applied a public profile to it automatically. If you said yes, it applied the private profile. So you just need to look at that. If you uncheck one or the other, that would be a reason why that wouldn't apply one way or the other way. Call this Cisco Lab ICMP allow. And then there we go. We got it here. And then when you're done with it, just smack the disable button and you'll see the green will go away on it. So yeah, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and yeah, have a great rest of your evening.